Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so we're diving into something today that literally affects almost all of us, our desperate need to escape into nature, and how that might actually be destroying it. Based on Professor Menga's research, we're going to unpack how tourism is way more than just snapping pictures. It is a massive, interconnected system that physically reshapes our planet. I mean, we've all felt the total irony of trying to escape the crowded city, only to end up sitting in a bumper-to-bumper traffic jam at a national park, right? So, get comfortable and let's explore how we can balance our wanderlust with the health of the Earth. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by untangling the paradox of travel, then look at ecosystems under pressure. After that, we'll get into governing the globe, rethink how we actually travel, and finally take a peek at the future of tourism. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The paradox of travel. To really get a grip on our environmental footprint, we've got to figure out why we travel in the first place, and more importantly, the myths we pack in our suitcases.
You know, we often operate under this wild illusion of human exceptionalism. It's basically the idea that we are totally separate from and honestly superior to nature. We treat the outdoors like it's just this pretty green backdrop for our vacation selfies. But complexity theory, it completely flips the script. It shows us that tourism is this deeply interconnected, nonlinear system. We aren't just visiting nature, we're actively shaping it. And hey, it shapes us right back. Literally, just adding a single new airline route can set off this massive ripple effect that changes an entire local ecosystem.
If you look back, our relationship with nature has completely shape-shifted over time. Before the 18th century, a lot of indigenous cultures viewed the land as this living, sacred entity. But then the Romantics came along, in the 18th and 19th centuries. They were desperate for a sublime, untouched wilderness as a way to escape those grimy, polluted industrial cities. But here is the massive irony. That romanticized myth of the pristine, empty wild, that is exactly what fuels today's mass tourism. Millions of us are chasing that untouched ideal, and by commodifying that aesthetic, we're actually wrecking the very nature we traveled so far to see.
All right, Section 2, Ecosystems Under Pressure. So what actually happens out there in the wild when millions of us are chasing these romantic ideals?
Marine tourism is, quite literally, a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you've got eco-conscious divers and snorkelers bringing in serious cash that actually funds coral conservation, which is amazing. It really boosts environmental awareness. But man, the flip side is brutal. When it's unregulated, the sheer volume of visitors causes unbelievable physical damage. We're talking boat anchors crushing fragile reefs, intense pollution from massive cruise ships, and just total habitat degradation. We're putting so much pressure on these underwater worlds, and they simply don't have the carrying capacity to handle it all.
And here's a super fascinating concept from the text: charismatic megaflora. We always hear about charismatic animals, right? Like pandas or lions. But it totally happens with plants, too. Take rare orchids. Going all in on visually stunning species is a fantastic way to draw in tourist dollars to fund botanical gardens. But it comes with a heavy risk. It can spark over-collection by tourists and poachers. And ironically, by obsessing over the pretty plants, we end up neglecting the broader, maybe less glamorous biodiversity that actually keeps the entire ecosystem alive.
But here's the thing we always seem to forget. Nature is not just sitting there passively. When we push an ecosystem past its limits, it bites back. We're seeing sudden, violent environmental shocks actively disrupting the very industry we built to enjoy them. We're talking hurricanes totally leveling coastal resorts, flash floods washing away roads, and wildfires just shutting down mountain retreats completely. It's a two-way street. Bad environmental management makes these natural hazards worse, and then those hazards financially devastate the tourism sector.
Moving on to Section 3, Governing the Globe. If nature is biting back and our ecosystems are straining, what in the world are we doing about it from a policy standpoint?
So, how do we actually manage all this globally? Well, the gold standard was set way back in 1987 by the Brundtland Report, also known as Our Common Future. It defines sustainable development perfectly, meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That one sentence is huge. It demands that we balance our craving for economic growth through tourism with strict ecological limits, so, our kids and grandkids can actually enjoy these places too.
To actually make that happen, policymakers rely on a framework called the Limits of Acceptable Change, or LAC for short. It's not about guessing. It is a strict three-step reality check. First up, authorities identify key scientific indicators, like, say, testing the water quality in a freshwater lake. Second, they draw a line in the sand, establishing a hard, acceptable limit for visitor impact before that ecosystem starts breaking down. And third, they use adaptive management to make absolutely sure that threshold is never crossed. It's basically a hard stop on over-tourism.
In the real world, this looks like intense demand management and land use planning. Destinations are getting smart about keeping tourists within those acceptable limits. They're rolling out visitor quotas and time ticketing at heavily crowded UNESCO World Heritage sites just to spread people out. And on the land use side, governments are drawing strict lines on maps. They're setting up protected conservation areas, creating buffer zones around super-sensitive ecosystems, and forcing developers to stick to highly controlled tourism zones. The whole point is to strictly control where and exactly how many tourists can go.
Which brings us to Section 4, Rethinking How We Travel. Now that we understand the global rules, let's look at the actual alternatives to traditional mass tourism.
So what are our options? Well, no model is perfect and they all come with trade-offs. Ecotourism, for instance, is fantastic for funding conservation, but the big danger there is greenwashing, companies just slapping an eco-friendly label on their marketing without doing the actual work. Then you have nature-based tourism, which is great for bringing economic growth to rural areas through outdoor recreation, but it risks major trail erosion and over-tourism. And agritourism, like those cute farm stays. They preserve agricultural heritage, sure, but if too many feet trample through, you're looking at water overuse and local soil degradation.
Wildlife tourism is the perfect example of this ethical tightrope. On one side, you have these incredible success stories, like community-led gorilla trekking in Rwanda. It's highly regulated, directly supports conservation, and provides vital jobs for locals. But man, the dark side of unregulated wildlife tourism is bleak. It causes severe animal stress, messes with their natural behavior, and can lead to outright exploitation, like those awful captive breeding programs or canned hunting. It literally all comes down to ethical management.
To fight back against these risks, there's this really fascinating paradigm shift taking off called slow travel. It's a movement practically begging us to ditch our exhausting, carbon-heavy itineraries. So instead of flying between 5 different cities in 10 days, slow travel is all about taking the train or cycling, staying way longer in one single location, and actually getting to know the local culture. It massively drops your carbon footprint while spreading your money much more fairly throughout the community. All right, final section. Section 5, the future of tourism. We've looked at the past, the problems, and the policies. Now let's look ahead.
It goes without saying, but climate change poses a massive existential threat to the tourism industry. The vulnerabilities are literally right in front of us. Coastal regions are staring down rising sea levels, and winter destinations are already having to pump out energy-intensive artificial snow just to stay open. The bitter irony here is that the tourism industry is incredibly vulnerable to the very climate crisis its own heavy footprint helps create. I mean, we're burning thousands of gallons of jet fuel just to go look at a melting glacier? It's wild.
But hey, there is hope. A super promising solution from the text is Adaptive Co-Management, or ACM. Think of it as the ultimate flexible governance strategy. It requires real, deep collaboration among local stakeholders, everyone from indigenous groups to local business owners, and it needs flexible laws that can pivot just as fast as the environment changes. A perfect example is Sweden's Kristianstads Vattenrike Biosphere Reserve. There, locals, scientists, and businesses are actively adapting their wetland tourism in real time. It's a total game changer.
Ultimately, securing a sustainable future for travel is a perfectly shared responsibility. It's a four-way split. Tourists, that's us, have to make informed, low-impact choices. Businesses have got to drop the greenwashing and actually commit to real corporate social responsibility. Policymakers need to set and enforce strict ecological limits, and local communities absolutely must be empowered to manage their own lands. If even one of these 4 pillars fails, the whole system just collapses.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to really chew on as you plan your next getaway. Are we literally loving nature to death? We've walked through the data, the policies, and the deep paradoxes. It is abundantly clear that the way we explore our planet has to fundamentally change. So ask yourself, what role are you going to play in that shared responsibility? How will your personal travel choices secure a sustainable future for the Earth? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.